the group they eat the least of are the adult females. It never gets above, say, 30-35% for any season. So the bulk of what wolves eat are other things than the breeders, or the key reproductive part of the herd. And if this was split out by prime-age cows and old cows, you would see that the segment of the herd they prey on the least are prime-aged cows. So the wolves, or the elk with the greatest reproductive potential, they prey on the least. So here's the seasonal cycle. This is the amount of food they eat per month. Those are the hard data points that we have. This is the number of kills per month, which is different because they're eating smaller prey in the summer. But you can see the hardest time of year to be a wolf is July. And so that's the limiting factor for a wolf, is how much food you can get in the middle of summer. And this is marrow. Again, I got to pick up speed here, but the black is male, the clear is female. And this is the number of animals that are basically in poor condition. And you can see that there's animals in poor condition year-round. But the worst are late winter and spring. And spring is, by the way, defined as May. And so it takes elk a while to recover their condition after winter. And of course, the end of winter varies every year. All of you know that. But once the winter ends, they need green up, and they need it for a few weeks. It's not just winter's over, then they're in good shape. And wolves really take advantage of that. So this is the time for the wolf. And this is the time for the elk. Although these bulls that's a female in summer, that's probably from lactation. These bulls in early winter, that's probably from rut, activities in the rut. But I'm glazing over some details. And so we're putting together, this is a word model, we'll be studying this. Climate change is affecting the food, which affects the elk condition, which affects wolf predation. That's essentially what I've said in the last couple of graphics. And of course, climate change and other things, this is deep snow. When you get conditions like this is going to favor the wolves. They're running right in the trench created by the elk. This is going to favor the wolves. And winters like this, and winter length, and all those things are going to factor in to this wolf-elk equation. And so this brings me to the, got to put this graph in every year. This is the size of one of those 7 elk herds that I mentioned, the northern Yellowstone elk herd. And this is what it was through a period of time when there were very few predators in Yellowstone. The park had killed off the predators. Wolves and cougars had not come back yet. Bear numbers were still low. Coyote numbers there aren't really clear numbers on. And so the park was regulating the size of the herd. They stopped that in 1968. You can see immediate eruption in elk. Probably too many elk. And then we reintroduced wolves right about here, and the herd's been declining ever since. And a huge point of contention is this is all due to wolves. One thing that should be pointed out is the state of Montana thought this was too many elk. They stated that openly, and they started managing for fewer elk. They kill on average 1,000 elk per year for 30 years. Some years 2,000. The other very key point is Yellowstone is probably as predator-rich as it's been in the last 100 years. Keep in mind, when the park was established in 1872, there was market hunting going on. So that had perturbed the system in terms of, well, everything. Fur trade as well, fur bearers. Then came park-sponsored predator control that started in the last wolf's done by 1926. But remember, they killed everything. Then in the 30s, the park started controlling elk and bison and pronghorn numbers. They shipped or killed 77,000 elk from the early 30s to late 60s. Last part of the 60s, they stopped. Cougars came back on their own in the 1980s. We brought back wolves in 1995, 1996. Bear numbers have increased over the last 30 years. We are as predator-rich as we've ever been, arguably. Here's a graphic showing what that means. This is the number of predator species. This doesn't include Yellowstone. This is Canada and Alaska. And this is the density of their primary species. And this isn't even looking at the density of that predator species. This is just looking at, are they there on the landscape or not? And you add predator species and your density is going down. Wolves, cougars, grizzlies, black bears, coyotes, humans. Humans count as a predator species. Key point. I answer several letters per year. I drive through the park and don't see elk anymore. Fix that, please. This is a National Park Service success story. We should embrace that. This is our mission, right? We want to preserve natural systems, protect them as natural. Of all of the land-based agencies out there, and I've asked a number of people of this, including Dan Wank, we have the closest mission to preservation of any other agency. Fish and Wildlife Service is close, but not in our category. So bringing back Yellowstone like it was, with restoration of predators, as controversial as you've probably heard it is hewing very close to our mission statement. This is a National Park Service success story. Very, very painful news for a lot of people. In fact, most people who live outside of national parks, and by definition, those are human-dominated landscapes. We control all the cards, period. Animals have no power. What it looks like outside of national parks is due to us. I'll get to what it kind of looks like inside national parks, maybe a lot due to them. That's called top-down trophic dynamics. Big area of study here. But key that you understand this policy distinction. We're very predator-rich now. You should expect less of those things. Key point. You might have to say to some people this summer, gee, I'm sorry about that, but that's our mission. Cougar came back on their own late 1980s. We brought back wolves. Bears increased on their own. Here are grizzlies in Pelican Valley. Wolf was an innocent bystander for this one. So because of that, 3 years ago, we began intensive elk studies. I can't overestimate, I won't spend much time emphasizing it, the controversy about fewer elk. And so we are addressing that issue. And in the last 3 years, we've collared 70-some elk. And so we are now, in addition to having a marked wolf population, we have a marked or a partially marked elk population to go right to the heart of the matter and understand these predator-prey dynamics. And elk are a huge system driver, and so we're trying to achieve better and more in-depth data on elk right now. And so a series of studies have been launched specifically looking at elk. Bison are different. I got to pick up some speed here. But wolves have a harder time killing bison. And the big male effect may be more pronounced. We don't know because we don't have as much data on this. But it just goes to make sense because bison are so much larger. And you know, the other thing about wolves that I often get the best questions of the year from school groups. I think I know what most of you are going to ask at the end, and usually I don't allow time for questions. So, but school groups always say interesting things like, what have you learned from wolves? Any tips you can give us? Tough question. I was stumped the first time I had it. And what I've learned is wolves have all the time in the world. No gadgets, go days without a meal. And so when dinner is 20 times as large as you, you're not going to go kill it quick. So this is all blood in the snow. The ravens are pecking at it. They've wounded this bison in a battle, and they're waiting for it to weaken. It took them several days to kill it. This, again, I want to say I'm sorry, because this does sound bad, but this is how nature works. I think you should explain that to visitors. So these wolves have all the time in the world. They're just waiting for their time. Or as some people say popularly, every dog has its day. They're waiting for the right day. Here's a look from the other side. There are the wolves that you saw up top. There are the ravens, the bison, and the pool of blood at the bottom. And then there's the rest of the pack waiting it out. Again, what do I say to school kids? Be patient. Let life come to you. Seize the moment. These wolves are. This is the winter of 2010, 2011. And you can see the shape those bison are in. Again, I just want to emphasize, this is not just wolves eat bison or wolves eat elk. So many people present it that way. It's simple. Wolves kill elk. Wolves kill bison. This is, look what weather, a hard winter will do, and that changes the whole story for that winter. This is a flight last year in Hayden Valley. That's a Deadpool Bison. We get many of these every rut. Like wolves, bison compete with each other, but they compete for access to females, and sometimes they die. And this is a food bonanza for carnivores, although this grizzly bear is controlling the kill. There's the wolf as a bystander. I tried to take a photo where you can see the blur. The next second this bear charged the wolf. You can't really see it, but they never pursue more than a couple steps because the wolves are so much quicker. Both wolves and bears have the same top speed, about 5 miles an hour, but wolves are much quicker. And so a bear, I've never seen him pursue more than a few steps. This photo, funny how none of my jokes get laughed at. I haven't said anything yet about this slide. But this slide got me in a little bit of trouble last year. I was tracking the canyon pack in Hayden Valley, another bison that got killed by another bison, and we're circling the wolves and said, hey, what's that over there? And we went over, and it's an untouched bull bison except for wounding from the rut, and this grizzly had controlled it. And we just flew over and snapped a picture because this was very near where we had a fatality in the park, and it was very near a trail. And I felt it was my duty as a park employee to report that to bear management. And this was on major news networks by Monday morning. And so I heard about it. I talked a little bit about this predator effect in Yellowstone. And I'll go through this quickly as well because I've kind of already emphasized it, but it deals with the effect of having the top level of the ecosystem in place. And in many ecosystems, that's either not in place or humans serve as the surrogate. And this is debated a lot of what's better, what's most appropriate, and how does it work. In Yellowstone, and as I said, probably few other areas, we have restored this top level of all the predators we have. And we're as predator rich, not only for Yellowstone's history, but for any place you'll find in North America. You won't find the mix of predators that we have or at their densities. Keep in mind, in Alaska and northern Canada, a good mix of predators is only one bear species. Rarely do they get two. Cougars have largely fallen out in far northern ecosystems. Coyotes are only around the towns. So you typically get one bear species, wolves and humans. Half what we get here. So does this affect them, which affects that? And that's essentially the question. This is what the ecosystem looked like early in the last century. Essentially all those guys were gone. Elk were high. That's why we started controlling them. That was the decision behind that. We know beavers were very high in the 20s, but then they became very low. I don't have my time periods exactly right. We don't know what songbirds were, but we're presuming because the woody vegetation was low, they were low too. They need that structural diversity. And so now, all this has changed. As I've said, elk are down, bison are actually up because predators have a harder time killing them. Beavers have increased tenfold. We've done studies on songbirds led by Lisa Burrill, and she noticed that in stands of willows that had recovered, songbirds were up. And we know now that willow have released. That's a consensus viewpoint. And aspen is probably doing so too. And why they've released is debated, but there's a number of papers that are coalescing around the idea that elk are very, very important. And that after elk, there are other things that are important, primarily availability to moisture that is important. But everybody agrees that these things are coming back and that it's affecting the system. So here's a before, here's an after, you've seen this before. The beavers respond to the willow, and when beavers respond to willow, they do this. This is actually slightly outside the park. This is Frenchie's Meadows in Gallup National Forest, up Slough Creek. But they create habitat diversity. There's a dam, there's another dam there. And they flood the water, and that provides habitat for other plants and animals. And when you get the landscape broken up like that, it creates opportunities for lots of other life. So this was kind of, for a lack of a better way to put it, that trickle-down effect. You restore that top level, and when I say top level, I'm not just talking about wolves. I'm talking about all those carnivores. How do they affect elk? How do they affect the plants? And how do the plants affect these things? That's called a trophic cascade. And the definition of a trophic cascade has indirect effects in there. How do wolves affect plants? They don't have anything to do with plants. They do so through the herbivore. Indirect effects. That's the definition of a trophic cascade. And when you get a return, these are some of the willow. This is an obligate willow nester, Wilson's warbler. You get a return of those. We're getting more willow flycatchers as well on the transects we're looking at for birds. There are other ecosystem effects of wolves. These are kind of a different subheading, and that is when they kill an elk. This is Hayden Valley in the summer, and a bear has taken over the kill. The wolves are innocent bystanders. You have ravens on the kill. You commonly get magpies. You commonly get coyotes. You commonly, especially in the wintertime, get bald and golden eagles. In fact, kind of loosely, I refer to the big five, that every carcass in winter, not summer, because the other scavengers aren't as food stressed in summer as they are winter, but the big five on a carcass in the winter are ravens, magpies, arguably they're the big two, bald eagles, golden eagles, and coyotes hit almost every carcass in the wintertime. And then throw in bears in the shoulder seasons. This is middle of summer, you can see here. And this is middle of summer last year, Pelican Valley. Again, wolves make the kill, and it looks to me like the bears are controlling it. 80% of the time on a wolf-killed carcass, bears displace wolves. That's interesting to me because in Banff, it's 50-50. And in Alaska, the data aren't as clear from Denali, but it appears to be lower rate than here. So why are wolves giving ground to bears so easily? Unknown, but my guess is the first 10-15 years of wolf recovery here is that it was easier for wolves to go out and make another kill than it is to defend against a bear. That's speculation. I think times are changing now. Every wolf kill is going to be more preciously held by the wolves, and it'll be interesting to see if we have a drop in that displacement rate. Here's the part that I really want to get to, management. This has been an interesting year in terms of wolf management in and outside of Yellowstone. This is something that all of us will work with, and that is we want to really, this is the best place in the world to observe wolves. But we still have to protect wolves and to prevent them from becoming human safety threats. So this guy's stalking the wolf around the car. Doesn't look great, and we're supposed to be 100 yards from wolves and bears, and this is closer. And when asked by a ranger why they were this close, their response was, well, the wolf walked closer. But we're supposed to maintain that distance. So if the wolf walks closer, you're supposed to back up. Those are the rules in the compendium.